You are tuned to ARP on the Accelerated Radio Network. It's 12 noon, and it's time to have lunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. Bringing money talk you can understand. And now here's your host, Miss Charlene.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. You're listening to Lunch with the Finance Bunch, and I am Miss Charlene. And today we have in the studio a gentleman that I've been so looking forward to meeting. His name is Erik Kaplan, and he's with THD Credit Consultants. And we're going to talk a lot about your FICO scores and credit reports and things like that today. It's great when you have good credit, but when you don't have good credit, it causes some challenges in pretty much every area of your life. So Erik is with us to answer our questions, educate us a little bit, and tell us about his company. Good afternoon, Erik.
Good afternoon, Charlene.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Erik has an office here in Santa Monica, and he also has an office in New York. So he came in today, especially for us, and I feel so privileged to have you in the studio to talk to us today.
My pleasure.
So with credit repair, first of all, we'd like to know, how did you get started in this industry? What is your background?
My background is mortgage banking.
Okay.
I worked for a couple different banks for about 12 years. When the subprime came around, I decided to help out my own client base.
Right.
And so at that point, I started helping fix their credit, and it just morphed into a full-time business.
Oh, wow. Wow. And so what do you see most of all in today's economy? 8 to 10 years ago, we had the market fell apart, and everyone's credit was challenged because of mortgages and seconds and, buying in a lot of cases more than could be afforded, or losing their job because the market fell apart. So we saw more mortgage-related credit challenges. But we're now in 2014, almost 2015. What do you see as our biggest challenges today?
Well, I think the mortgages are still a part of it, because there's still a lot of foreclosures and short sales that are still out there,
right,
and or second mortgages that were part of a short sale or a foreclosure that people still owe money on. But I think one of the bigger things is the credit card debt, medical bills. I think medical bills and people, when they default on their home or they're getting in trouble on their home, they got to do a loan modification. Sometimes they let their credit cards go.
That's very true.
And so that's one of the bigger things you see right now is people have a lot of credit card debt.
Okay. Now, with credit card debt, this conversation comes up a lot, and this conversation is probably going to be all over the place, but people should grab a pen, and if they want more information or if they need your help, I'd like for them to be able to call you. So at the beginning of the show, I always ask my listeners to grab a pencil and a piece of paper or a pen. This way you can write information down. If you have credit questions, they can direct those questions at you, and if they want to meet you or have them use your service, then we'll make that information available too.
Sounds good.
Okay, so when we're talking about fixing credit, what does that mean? Let's say a person has issues with their credit, but what does it mean? Can someone actually get their credit fixed?
There's a lot of different factors that go into credit repair. Someone might have a late payment on a mortgage, or a late payment on a car, late payment on credit cards, and sometimes those can be fixed. Sometimes they can't be fixed, but sometimes they can be fixed. So it really depends on who their lender is, who the credit card company is. Also you'll have medical debt, collection accounts. So really, when you look at a credit report, you're looking to see, can you raise those scores, and by how much can you get those scores raised? And sometimes people don't have any positive credit. It might just be negative credit. And so getting some positive credit, maybe a secured credit card, a revolving credit card, these things will help you raise your scores. And so just because you have, bad credit or derogatory accounts on your credit report doesn't mean you can't fix your credit.
Right.
Most credit can actually be fixed. It's just about how far you can get it up to. And in some cases, medical debt or credit card debt, if settled or some of these medical collections are paid, it'll help them because once it's paid, you can get them deleted from the credit report.
Oh,
and by getting these things deleted, it helps raise the scores. Again, they have to have some positive credit.
Right.
Because if you have no positive credit and it's all negative, it's very hard to get your scores up.
Exactly. So let's take this elephant one piece at a time, because I'd like to talk about credit repair, and then there are certain within your credit report things like student loans, and that's the big question today. And hospital bills is another big question that I'm always asked about. and debt settlement. What should you do about debt settlement and, that kind of thing. So let's start with the credit repair. If a person, let's say, has a lot of debt, this is a common question I get all the time. How much debt is okay to have on a credit card? Like say they have a credit card and it has a limit of $1,000. Where should you stay within the range before it starts having a negative effect on your credit, even though you're paying your payments on time?
It's a good question. So there's 3 tiers.
Mm-hmm.
There's if you stay below 70%. So if you owe $1,000
right.
and you pay it below $700,
right.
that's one tier. It'll
right.
help your scores.
Mm-hmm.
If you get it below 50%, it will
mm-hmm.
help your scores even more.
Okay.
If you keep it below 30%, that's when you're going to get the most out of your credit score.
Yes.
And typically, it's good to have 2 or 3 credit cards.
Okay.
And if you have your credit cards and you keep them at 50%, it's good for your credit. If you can
right.
keep it below that, it's even better.
Right.
The misconception is that if you charge a credit card up until a full month, if you max it out, let's say, and then you pay it down the next day, that credit's not the money is not going to show on your credit card or your credit report for 30 days or when the credit card company
updates
the report.
Right.
So if you max it out, but you say, hey, I pay my card off every month, it's not going to update until that one day that the credit card company updates it.
That's right.
So if you keep it below 50%, continual, you'll have the better score.
Right. So don't play the game of running your credit cards all the way up to the max and then pay them off, and then because it's still going to have a negative impact on your credit. You're saying whatever your score is, you should keep it at a 50% of that balance amount owed or less.
Correct. Never
go above 50% because then it's having a derogatory impact on your credit.
And it also depends on how many cards you have. Because if you have 1 or 2 cards and you max it out, it's going to lower your score.
Right.
If you have 10 or 15 cards and you max 2 out, it's not going to be that big of a
right, because it's calculated based on the number of lines of credit that you have open,
and the months or years you've had it open for.
Right.
Correct.
Exactly. Now, do you deal directly with the credit bureaus, or do you deal directly with the when a person comes to you and they want their credit repaired, and you look at their credit report and you see, okay, it's ABC company. Are you the person who contacts that company and tries to work with them, or how does your business work?
Well, basically, if it's settling credit card debt or medical debt, we will handle that for the client.
Okay.
We'll reach out to them. We'll do the settlement. We'll go to them and say, you owe $5,000. We'll settle for $1,000. Are you okay with that? If they say yes, we're okay with that, then we get it in writing and we move forward. If it comes to disputing items on the credit report, we handle that for the client.
Okay.
So basically, once they give us the report and we tell them what we can do, they're basically out of the loop until we're done with their credit.
Okay, and then that's that's another question I had. Who runs the credit report? Do you run their credit report, or do they have to get a credit report run somewhere?
Typically, you want to get it, unless they're going for a mortgage and they can give us the mortgage credit report. Otherwise, if they don't, then we will ask them to go to a consumer credit report and get a tri-merge credit report from them.
Right, all 3.
Yeah.
And tri-merge, for those of you who don't know, tri-merge means all 3 credit bureaus. And then you get the report that shows all of the debt that you have that has been reported to a credit reporting agency.
Correct. It's also important to know that if you get just one bureau, there might be things on the other 2
that are not on one.
So it's always good to get 3 so you see what you're dealing with.
Exactly. And then the cost of credit repair. What is the cost of having your credit repaired? Is it a flat fee? Is it how's that calculated?
We typically charge anywhere between $400 and $1,000, depending on how much work is involved. We typically take half our money up front and then half our money when we're done.
Okay.
And then usually it could take anywhere from 30 days to 120 days to sometimes 6 months. It really depends on how much work is involved.
Right.
We guarantee what we do. So if we do something we don't give them the score or the results they're looking for, we'll go ahead and refund their money to them.
Oh wow! Now another question I had along those lines is, when you're dealing with credit report, people always have the question of, if it's taken off the credit report, can it be put back on?
Great question. The answer is, if it's a collection account and it's taken off the credit report, that collection agency cannot put it back on. However, if they sell the debt to somebody else, they will put it back on. Now, another thing is that, let's say there's a statute of limitations on some accounts, which is on credit cards and medical debt is 4 years in the state of California. After the 4-year period, if you get it off, if someone buys that debt or that debt sold to someone else, they can, up until the 7-year period from the last time they made a payment, add that back on their credit report.
And it will re-impact their credit.
It will re-impact their credit.
Wow.
But if you get a line item off a certain company, they cannot put it back on.
Okay, so if they owe ABC Company and you have them settle with ABC Company and it's off their credit, ABC Company cannot turn around and sell that debt to one of those debt companies, and they put it back on.
That's correct.
For the balance.
They cannot do that. But sometimes, because they pool some of these debt buyers pool a bunch of debts together, they'll sell it, and the other company won't know that you actually paid it.
Okay.
And so they may call you or write a letter to you and say, you owe us this money. You always got to make sure, see how old the debt is before you go pay somebody. Because if you pay somebody that's debt's past the statute of limitations, you're basically throwing your money away.
Exactly. So I think some of our listeners may have their pencil by now. So you want to give us the contact information so that if someone listening wants to get started with cleaning up their credit and getting on the right track, because you need good credit to move forward. You can purchase things when you don't have good credit, but you're going to pay a lot more for them because your interest rate is going to be astronomical if you can get credit. So you want to give them your information.
So my phone number is 800-822-7150. Again, that's 800-822-7150. And my email address is KAP, as in Paul, ERIK @gmail.com, which is KAP ERIK @gmail.com.
That's great. And you're listening to Erik Kaplan, and he's with THD Credit Consultants. And like I said, Erik has offices both here in Southern California, in Santa Monica, and he has an office in New York. And I have had the pleasure of sitting and having conversations with him, and he's very knowledgeable. So if you need someone to help you get out of the predicament that you may have gotten yourself into by not knowing, some of the perils of getting into credit or having life hand you situations where it couldn't be helped, either way, Erik can help you put together a better credit portfolio so you can move forward with your life.
I think I might have given them the wrong phone number.
Okay, so let's do this phone number again.
Let's see. They can call 310-804-9353. It's 310-804-9353.
Perfect.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. And then if an item gets deleted, removed from the credit report, will it ever come back again? And you said no, not if it's done correctly.
Correct.
Right. And the only way... People have the misconception that if they ignore the debt, it goes away. How long does it take for ignored debt to go away?
So each state is different. Each state has their own separate laws. But in the state of California, a debt will go away after 7 years.
Okay.
In some states, it might be 6 years. I think in New York is 6 years. But LA is 7 years.
Oh, okay.
Now, a company cannot sue you. They cannot actually come after you and file a lawsuit against you after 4 years.
Okay.
But between the 4 and 7 years, it will stay on there for another 3 years.
Right. And like you said, the debt can be purchased, and another company who's a debt, people who purchase debt, they can come after you. Now, can they only come after you up to the 7th year and not after that, or does it restart?
It does not restart. They can come after you up until the 7th year, but there's a lot of companies out there that will try to keep coming after you because many people don't know that if a debt is there, if it's 7 years past the statute of limitations, they may not know this. And so someone may get a threatening phone call, hey, you owe this debt to us, you pay us now, or this is going to happen to you. You need to make sure that this debt is, when was the last time you paid that debt?
Right.
And if you check your credit report, if it's not on your credit report because it's past the 7 years, it will fall off.
Okay, so if it's not on your credit report and it's fallen off, and it's not on any of the 3 bureaus, then that's not a debt that you
don't want to pay.
You want to pay,
Yeah,
okay, because it's already been deleted from your credit report.
Correct.
Now, can you remove late payments from the credit report?
Again, it depends on who the creditor is, who the lender is, but yes, we have about a 75 to 80% success rate in getting late payments off the credit report.
Wow, that's great. And so is this across the board, like any type of credit?
Well, typically credit cards I would say yes with credit cards, yes with mortgage lates. And again, it really depends on who the lender is.
Okay.
Because there's certain lenders, which I don't want to say, but
right.
but certain lenders that are a little more difficult than others.
Okay.
And it's the same with auto loans. There's some auto loan companies that are very easy to get off. Well, not easy, easier to get off, and some of them are very hard to get off. So we let people know up front, this is the realistic expectation. there's a 70% chance we'll get this off. And if we don't get it off, we'll refund your money to you. You know, if we do get it off, you know, there you go. You move on with the better credit.
Right. Now, are there letters of explanations that are needed? Because sometimes, you know, a person will look at their credit report and it's just overwhelming. And then they'll say, well, I don't want to really pay someone to, you know, take care of this for me. Can someone do it themselves?
100%. Yeah, you could definitely do it yourself. I mean, if you have a reason why you went late, and you call that company and say, I was late because whatever the reason was, and they buy it, and they will say okay, and you remove it, then by all means, you know, you could definitely do this by yourself.
Okay.
Why people hire us is because sometimes they don't have the time to do it.
Right.
They don't know where to start. You know, and they just don't know the know-how.
Right. Well, the education part of it alone, like knowing the laws and knowing, you know, the time when you can still be, your credit can still be impacted by something that happened and how many years can pass. A lot of that information seems to be kind of where people get lost in it.
It's all that's definitely one of them. There's you know, the other is knowing what company you can get deletion letter from, which medical companies you can get deleted from your credit report without paying. You know, which collection agencies you can get deleted from your credit report without paying, no matter if they're 2, 3, 4 years old. So it really comes down to, you know, you want to fix yourself, or do you want to go to a doctor to fix you?
Right, exactly. Sometimes you should go to a doctor, usually, unless you just like slightly cut your finger or something. I suggest the doctor.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So now, as far as your company is concerned, I mean, how many credit reports do you look at? Well, not look at, but how many clients do you have, like, on a monthly basis? We
do about 80 to 100 credit repairs a month.
Wow.
Our business is 100% referral based. We've been doing this about 10 years. We do about $4 to $5 million in debt settlement a month.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's you know, it took a long time to get here, but you know, now we've you know, actually know the ropes and we know what we're doing, and so we do about 800 to 900 credit repairs a year.
This is great. You're listening to Accelerated Radio. This is Lunch with the Finance Bunch, and this is Miss Charlene, and I have in the studio today Mr. Erik Kaplan, and we're talking about credit repair. You can reach us on www.acceleratedradio.com. You can also listen to us on TuneIn Radio, and you go to Accelerated Radio, and you can download it onto your iPhone or your smartphone. You can also listen to it on my website, which is The Finance Bunch, on Gmail. So there's several ways you can listen to us, but I'm excited about this conversation we're having today. And Erik, thank you again so much for coming in and explaining things to us. The second part of this I want to talk about, the thing that people really have a hard time with is debt settlement. Like, how much of the debt do you actually have to pay? Could you kind of explain some of that to us?
Sure. Well, I'll take credit card debt to start with.
Okay.
So there's a couple different. If you're dealing with the credit card company themselves,
right,
or you're dealing with a collection agency. If you're dealing with a credit card company, you're typically going to settle between 30 to 35 cents on the dollar. Some companies you'll have to go up to 45 cents. There's only a couple companies that happens with. If you're dealing with, if a company charges it off, I mean, they charge off the bad debt,
right,
and it goes to a collection agency, then typically you can go anywhere from 25 to 30 cents on the dollar. Now, when you settle with a collection agency, they usually want a lump sum. So they want the payment in a lump sum if you want the lowest possible settlement. If you're dealing with the credit card companies, they will give you up to 3 to 4 months to pay off that debt. So, for example, if you have a $10,000 balance and they settle for $3,000, you can pay $1,000 a month for 3 months.
Wow.
Now, if you want to talk about second mortgages, sometimes they'll go down to 10 or 15 cents on the dollar on a second mortgage, but typically on those kind of debts, they want a lump sum.
A lump sum.
They're not going to take a
arranged payment.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, once you make arrangements and once it's been paid off, does that come off of your credit, or does it just show as paid?
Good question. So if it's a credit card company, if it's with the creditor, then it stays on for 7 years. You cannot get that line item taken off the credit report. But in some cases, you can get the settled for less or the charged off language removed from the credit report. Oh. When it comes to a collection agency, and you settle with the collection agency, again, it depends on who the collection agency is, because a lot of the times you can get that actual agency deleted from the credit report.
That's great. And, we're talking about 2015, and, everyone wants to start off the year by, eliminating some of the challenges they've had in the past. And so credit is a great place to start. It's like cleaning house. first you need to know what's dirty, right? So you need the 3 reports to look at to see what is on them. And, Eric, what I've noticed being in the mortgage business is that people are so afraid. If they're not confident that they have great credit, they are so afraid of running that credit report. Fear just cripples them, and it can cripple them for years at a time where they just will not print that credit report. And, to know that there's people out there who are creditable, and that's another thing. How do you know creditable companies? Can you speak to that? Because you and I talked about that a little bit. If I'm looking for a creditable company, someone I can trust to, handle my credit issues, how do I know that you are a creditable company?
I mean, first of all, I always check anybody on the internet. Check Yelp, check LinkedIn, check whatever sites are out there,
right, to
see if there's any negative reviews.
Right. If
there's no negative reviews, you're probably in good hands.
Right.
Even if there's 1 or 2 negative reviews, sometimes you might have to read those reviews because it might be somebody that is just angry at one time that something didn't go right and maybe they wanted a refund and get a refund. So I would say if you research whoever you're doing business with, it's very important. I guess it's important whenever you do.
Absolutely, and whether you're the one.
Let me touch on one thing that you said about about being scared about pulling your credit. Is that a lot of times people are scared because they're getting phone calls from all these collection agencies, right? And then they're getting inundated, and they just think, oh, my credit report is so bad because there's so many people calling me. Well, one of the things that we can handle for them is stopping the phone calls. And by stopping those phone calls, that just alleviates a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, because a lot of people, they may know they're in debt, but this just adds, salt to the wound.
That's right.
So, and a lot of times when people do pull their credit, they think it's worse off than it actually is.
Yes. Usually people are pleasantly surprised that their credit isn't as bad as they have imagined in their mind.
That's correct.
Wow. You're listening to Accelerated Radio, 24-hour gospel. My name is Miss Charlene, and you're having lunch with the Finance Bunch. Eric, it's so great to have you in and answering these questions for us. If you need to raise your score by 3 to 5 points to qualify for a loan, is there anything that you can do to help raise that score quickly?
There's a couple things you can do. First of all, if you have a credit card, as we talked about earlier, that's has a high credit limit to the high balance of the credit limit. If you pay it down, you can do a rapid rescore,
right?
Or you can actually fax those letters to the credit bureaus, and you can have them updated in a very short matter of time. Okay. And that typically raises your score, 3 to 10, maybe 5 to 10 points.
That's great.
Also, if you have a medical collection, and it's a recent medical collection, and this company will delete it from your credit report if paid, by getting that deleted off your credit report, again, it will help you raise your credit scores.
Oh, wow. So, and that's something I want to talk to you about, too, is hospital bills. A lot of people have debt on their credit that's purely hospital related or emergency room related. It has nothing to do with credit cards or buying houses or cars or anything. What happens with that debt? How do we address that debt?
Medical debt is unfortunately it's when it stays there for quite some time. It stays there for about 7 years.
Okay.
And so I'd say with medical debt, if you you can't talk your way out of medical debt, you can't say the insurance is supposed to cover it. I had insurance or I had Medicare, Medicaid, whatever it is. Sometimes it's co-pays, or sometimes it's the debt that a payment that you just didn't have insurance at the time.
Right.
It can be settled, but it can't be settled for 30 cents on the dollar.
Okay.
It can be settled for 50 to 60 to 70 cents on the dollar.
So they want all of their money, pretty much.
Well, yeah, it's usually the hospitals or the doctors that do this, so they want their money.
Right.
Sometimes you can go back to the doctor. You can't really go back to the hospital, but you can go back to the doctor and find out why they sent it as a collection, and maybe it was a mishap. But medical collections and hospital bills don't go away. Okay. But if filing bankruptcy, you can get rid of those.
Right.
But you can't. It's very hard to delete medical collection accounts that are actually owed.
Okay. So there's no deletion of those.
There is if you pay it. But it's not. It's very hard to get off the report if you don't pay it.
Okay. So now, if it's paid, can it be deleted from the report?
Well, yes, you can actually negotiate with some of these companies a pay for deletion. So if you pay the debt, you can actually pay to get it deleted from your credit report.
Oh, great! So it looks like in 2015 we can go into the year, or at least start the year off by making the commitment to cleaning up those credit reports and getting yourself in a great position, because the difference in your payment on interest rates is astronomical. When you're talking about buying a car or a house, it's the difference in payments is just unbelievable in what the interest rate will be. And like when we were talking earlier, you can't even buy a house if you don't address your credit issues.
Yeah, if you owe collection account, as you know, as a loan officer, if you have medical, I'm not forgetting about medical, credit card debt that's charged off.
That's right.
You can't buy a house.
That's right.
If you have a repossession on a car.
That's right.
You can't buy a house until that's taken care of.
Right. They want you to address those issues. Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to clean up our credit for 2015 and
the other thing is tax liens. Tax liens is a big issue.
Tax liens. Yes, I was going to ask you about tax liens. So now, a tax lien. What do you do if a person has a tax lien?
If a tax lien is not paid, a tax lien needs to be paid in order to have a chance of getting it deleted from the credit report.
Okay.
And typically, we don't deal with the IRS because it's a beast on its own.
Right.
But sometimes there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of reputable companies that can help you do an offer and compromise. There's a lot of companies that, if you're on a payment plan with the IRS, but once it's paid and settled or paid and released,
right,
it's easier to get removed from the credit report.
Okay. Yeah, because that's a whole world in and of itself.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. How do you charge for the fixing of credit? Now, you said it ranges from $400 to $1,000, and does it matter how many items need to be deleted, or how hard it is to delete the items? How do you?
We base it typically on how much work is involved. We don't do it by line item. It's more about how intense each credit report is. Some credit reports, if the collection accounts or negative accounts are older, it's a little easier to get removed.
Okay.
If it's newer stuff and it's going to take us a long time to fix, we usually charge a little bit more. If they have a lot of items or it's debt settlement, we have to charge a little bit more for that as well.
Okay. Now, I wanted to really talk about, so we've talked about getting items deleted, but I want to really talk about debt settlement, because I think that's someplace we need to spend a little bit of time so people really understand what that means. What does debt settlement mean?
Well, basically, settling your debt is if you have the main issue is credit card debt.
Right.
So many people have credit card debt. It could be credit card debt that's 2 years old, a credit card debt that you're having a default on, but you're having problems making your payments.
Right.
So there is help for that. There's a consolidation company. I'm not a consolidation company, but they're out there.
Right.
What we do is we help settle their debt for 20 to 35 cents on the dollar. And so, if you're someone who's current right now and you're going through a hard time, you can set up a plan where if you default on your credit cards in 6 months, you can have the stuff paid off for a small percentage. If you're somebody who has this stuff that's 2-3 years old and you don't want to deal with it because you just don't have the money to deal with it, there's ways to, it's not going to go away. Right. It's going to stay there for 7 years.
That's the point that I think people need to understand, is that your bad debt is not going to go away. You have to do something. You have to deal with it in some way. You either deal with it yourself and you call the different credit bureaus, get a copy of your report, and deal with each line item yourself, or you hire a professional who can help you, and like you said, someone who knows which companies work, and how they work, and that helps a lot too.
Right. One other thing is that you one thing you don't want to do is if it's past the 4 years,
right,
you don't want to start making payments on it because you're going to restart the statute of limitations.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So 4 years is the key number here. You don't want to start payment on an account that's 4 years old or older.
Right. You can settle it.
You can settle it
in one lump sum, but you don't want to start payments over, because that's where people get you. Because once you start that payment over, that 7 years starts all over again.
So if at the 4th year you start making payments on an old account, it will start the 7-year statute of limitations over again. Yes. That's great information to have. Yes. Great information. Thank you. Now, some of our clients, I notice, divorce is a big deal. And sometimes you'll have someone whose credit really will take a beating because they were in a relationship and, the spouse was negligent. How do you help people who are in that situation?
It's a good question. A couple ways. One is sometimes when spouses get credit cards, they add each other as an authorized user. Right. When you're an authorized user, you're not liable for the debt. Right. However, if you get divorced and on your credit report, whoever the spouse, whatever, it says authorized user, you can get that deleted from your credit report. Now, if you're joint on the credit card or the debt, the home, whatever it may be, the car, and they default, it's very hard. You're liable for just as your spouse is. And so you have to deal with it the same way. You either have to settle the debt It's just not going to go away.
Right.
And even the divorce decree, even if your spouse got all the debt in the divorce decree, that divorce decree is not going to alleviate you from that debt. You're still liable for it. And it's still going to be on your credit report, and you still have to address it.
Wow. So you still, even if the court releases you, the credit card companies and, your FICO score is still going to suffer.
Correct.
Wow. So a divorced person who has a divorce decree, and they can point at it and say, look,
look,
I'm not responsible for this debt, but the credit card companies, do you have to notify them?
Well, the problem is that you signed up for the debt together.
Right.
And you're joint. And you're both, when you sign that, you're both liable. So even that divorce decree is on there, it's not going to alleviate you from your responsibility. Even though your spouse in the divorce decree says, he's got to pay it or she's got to pay it. You still have to, you're going to still be, if you want your credit fixed, you got to deal with it. Wow. So they still need to call you. They still need to call us. Right. And get that worked out. And so what is the phone number that you're going to? It's a 310-804-9353. Again, 310-804-9353. And you're having lunch with the Finance Bunch, and this is Erik Kaplan, and he is with THD Credit Consultants. He has offices both here in Southern California and in New York, and he's answering all the questions, all the things we want to know about our credit report and how to remove things that we want to ask. Something else that we were talking about, these debt buyers. What is up with these debt buyers? Because I have clients of mine who, may have an old account on their credit report, and they'll tell me that people call them and really nasty, being rude and threatening and all of that. What is that debt purchase? They don't just. It's not even debt that might be on your credit report. It might be debt that's 8, 9, 10 years old. Because what these companies do is they'll buy bulk bad debt from companies, from credit card companies, or there's a couple different tiers of the debt buyers. There's the first tier that buy it at a certain percentage, and then if they can't collect, they pass it on to the next debt buyer. Wow. So you got to be careful when you're selling this debt, or if the scare tax is what they do and call you and threaten you. You got to make sure that if it's not on your credit report, I would not even deal with it. Right. I would tell them I would hang up on them. We can send them a debt validation letter. We can send them a cease and desist letter. They can stop calling. But if it's not on your credit report, I would just tell them to leave you alone and or take care of the phone calls if they're bothering you. Right. If it's a debt buyer that's on your credit report, a lot of times if you settle with them, they'll settle for a very low percentage because they bought it for a very low percentage. So again, it depends on who the debt buyer is. Okay. So now here we are with this 4-year mark again, and the debt buyer has purchased this debt, and you're above. Let me interject for 1 second. Okay. They might buy that debt after the 2nd year. Okay. It not necessarily has to be the 4th year. Okay. Because a credit card company, when they charge it off, they figure this is uncollectible, and they may give it to a debt buyer within the 2nd year, not just the 4th year. Oh, okay. So if it's within the 2nd or 3rd year that they sell this debt, and now you're dealing strictly with the debt buyer and no longer the company, can you circumvent that and deal with the company that originally sold the debt? No. You have to deal with the debt. The debt buyer. And the debt buyer has so if they buy after the 2nd year, they can sue you within that 4th year. So they can still sue you if they buy the debt in the 2nd year. Up until the 4th year, they still have a chance to sue you. Really? Yes. That's good to know. Because they bought it and they have the right to it. Oh, okay. So after the 4-year mark, they can still sue you? No, up until the 4th year mark. 4th year. After the 4th year mark, they cannot sue you anymore. Okay, but they can still collect on it. They can still collect on it. Okay, and you want to settle with them. You don't want to start making payments on it. You want to settle. Correct. Okay, and then, of course, there has to be, anytime you settle with someone, you want a letter stating what you're settling on, how much is being paid, that you paid it, and you're now released. So are there 2 letters involved? There's 2 letters involved. Okay. Good one. Okay. There's the first letter saying, here's what we agree upon. Okay. You're going to settle this account for 20 cents on the dollar. You're going to pay on January 24th. And then after you get that letter, you want a paid in full or a settled in full letter. Okay. And you want to make sure you get that, because a lot of the times, if you settle a debt with either a credit card company or the debt buyer or collection agency, there's a lot of times it may stay on your credit report for some time without it showing a zero balance. Wow. With that paid in full letter or settled in full letter, you can have it updated to show a zero balance very quickly off your credit report. Oh, we're getting some good tidbits of information here. Okay. Now,
I know what we in mortgage banking considers, credit that's challenged. But what do you, in your experience, what is a good FICO score?
Well, it depends what you're looking for.
Right.
Like auto loan, home loan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anywhere over 720, 740, it's a great credit score.
Right. Now, someone whose credit score is 500, is there any way to get that credit score up to 720?
Well, it's going to take some time.
Okay.
It's going to take some cleaning up to do.
Okay.
But yeah, we've done it. We do it all the time.
Okay.
A lot of times if someone has a 500 credit score,
Mm-hmm.
they may not have any positive credit.
Right.
And if you have old debts and no positive credit, the minute you get some positive credit, you're going to see your scores jump like 50, 80, 100 points.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to get positive credit that's very simple.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
How do we get positive credit?
So there's a couple tricks and there's a couple ways to do it.
I want both.
Okay, I'll go with the tricks first.
Okay.
So, if someone, a family member or spouse has a credit card, they can add you as an authorized user to that card,
Mm-hmm.
and you basically get the benefit of not having the card, but having the credit history.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you have a credit card that's 2 years old, 3 years old, it's a
Mm-hmm.
good standing, your credit limit is below, or your credit balance is below 30% of the credit limit,
Mm-hmm.
and you add someone to the card, they get the history of that card.
Oh, wow.
Now, they don't have to use the card, because if you don't
Right.
trust your spouse, you don't have to give them the card.
Right.
But,
You can just add them as a user and not give them a card.
correct.
You
And
know,
it'll help raise their scores.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of different companies out there
Mm-hmm.
that will help you get a credit card. For example, Capital One is one that helps people
Right.
rebuild credit. Credit One Bank is another one.
Okay.
First Premier is another. I don't love First Premier just because they have a lot of fees but it's another company that you can use.
Okay. So Capital One, First Premier,
And Credit One
and Credit
Bank.
One Bank are all companies that will help you reestablish your credit.
And they won't. Most of the time, they won't make you have a secured credit card.
Right. They'll give you actually a line of credit. It may not be a high line of credit, but they'll usually start you somewhere around $300 to $500. And then as you show yourself to be worthy of with them, then they'll raise that limit and continue to raise it, over a course of time.
Correct.
That's another question that I get a lot, and maybe the answer to that is how often, when they get a new credit card, a lot of companies will raise their credit limit, but at what interval of time?
I think I don't know the exact interval of time. I know that after 6 months, if you make your payments on time, a lot of them will raise your limit. However, if you keep your balance low, if you don't go max it out, because if you max it out, they're not going to do that.
Right.
Because they're going to think you can't manage your money.
Exactly.
But if you keep it low for 6 months, they usually raise it up very quickly.
When we're talking, 30 to 50% of the available balance should always be available.
Correct.
Yes, because people get credit cards and just max them out on the first, just go max them out and think, I can max it out and pay at the end of the month. So I'm glad you brought that up, that even if you pay it off, it will not show reported until that company, the credit card company that you're dealing with, updates your credit report, which could take 30 to 60 days.
Well, it doesn't take 60 days. It usually takes, the cycle's like 30 days.
Okay.
So, but you can always find out when the company's going to report.
Okay.
So, you could look on your credit report, it'll say, Capital One or whoever your credit card company is reports in the 18th of each month. So
Right.
you know that the 18th, whatever you paid your balance down to is going to report.
It's going to report. Okay.
Right.
So if you want to play that game, but I would just keep it from 30 to 50% of your available credit available, and available so that it does not have a negative impact on your credit.
Yeah, I mean, it's better for you if you're going to go apply for something. Listen, if you want to max your card out, it's okay. But if you're going to go apply for something, whether it be a car or a home, you want to make sure for 60 days prior to that, you pay your card down to at least under 50 or 30 cents or percent of the credit limit.
Of the credit limit. Good information. This is great. I know that our listeners are definitely going to be calling you. I know that because everybody wants to. Not everyone has bad credit, but a lot of people need to improve the score that they have. And you don't necessarily need to have bad credit to get good credit advice, and how to improve your credit. So even those out there whose FICO scores may not be quite 700, you may want to call in too, because the higher your credit, your FICO score, the lower the interest you pay on items that you want to purchase. And it can have a significant impact on your monthly payment. Significant. It could be the difference between having a credit card at 2% and one at 18%. Just your FICO score makes that distinction.
Even an auto loan,
and auto loans too.
Even mortgages. I mean,
That's
how much
right.
do you save on an interest rate if you go from 700 to 740?
Oh my goodness. And how many more programs are available to you? Because under, 680, you basically have one program that you can, get a home with, and that's, you want to have variety. You want to have the ability to make decisions, based on good credit, so that you have more available to you, and lower. And what that really turns out to be is lower interest rates, and you paying out less money per month that's not going towards what you're purchasing. Because a person can buy a car for $20,000 with bad credit, and a car for $40,000 with great credit, and their payment be the same, or less, because of the interest rate. That's what we're focused on, the interest rate.
And it's always good to give yourself options.
Options
are key.
Yes, definitely. Options are key. Now, give us that phone number again.
Sure, 310-804-9353.
And if they want to contact you by email?
It's KAP, as in Paul, ERIK, @gmail.com.
That's great. Now, we've talked about, your rebuilding credit and how to get negative things off of your credit report. What about student loans? That's a big deal. Student loans.
Very big deal. So
if
if you're defaulted on a student loan, you have some options.
Okay.
The best option is a rehabilitation program.
Okay.
A rehabilitation program is usually for government-backed loans.
Mm-hmm.
You pay them 9 months, and in the 9 month after the 9 month period, they actually take all the negative on your credit report and turn it into a positive. Some of the companies they will actually waive whatever penalties and interest that you have accumulated over the time that you haven't made those payments. And so that's one way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And all you have to do is call them up and ask them about a rehabilitation program, and they all have them.
Okay.
The other way is if it's a private student loan, there's some cases you can settle with them. So they're not going to go for the 30 cents on the dollar, but they will settle 60-70% of what is owed.
Oh, okay. Now, what about those penalties and fees? Because that's where, you have the biggest challenge, is the penalties and fees, and how the interest continues to accumulate whether you're making the payment or not.
I mean, the best bet for a student loan is do the rehabilitation program.
I think so.
Because that's going to save you in the long run a lot of money. It's going to fix your credit.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 months, although it seems like a long time, is not that long of a time.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
It's really not, especially and there is no quick fix. I mean, you can get your credit score up by a few points by, paying down debt. If you don't have bad credit, paying down the debt, and, making short reports to the credit bureau so that when you go to buy something, your debt is lower, so your FICO score is higher. But usually there's no quick fix. You got to put the work in. So let's start with running our credit to see where we are, who we owe, and how it can be fixed, and you need to call Erik and his team and have them work professionally on your debt so that you can get the best FICO score available. The better your FICO score, the better your credit, the lower your interest rates. And that's the key. And this show is a lot about building wealth and about, how to build and maintain wealth. And, you don't have the ability to have that borrowing power if your credit is bad. You just don't have the same borrowing power. So thank you for taking the time today to explain some of this to our listening audience. Another thing we talked about that you wanted to discuss was the Consumer Protection Bureau. Who are they, and how do they protect us?
They're there for people that these debt buyers or these companies that will call you up and threaten you and harass you.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel wronged by a company, if you have a late payment from a credit card company or auto loan, and you feel that maybe you had a auto pay and it didn't happen, and they won't fix it. The Consumer Protection Bureau will help. You can file a complaint against these companies, and a lot of the times, if you file a complaint, they'll submit it to whoever the creditor is, and you'll get a response within 30 to 45 days. Sometimes it's favorable, and sometimes, unfortunately, it's not favorable. But a lot of times, it does help.
Right. And so can that help them cease and desist with the phone calls from these debt busters or these debt collectors who have purchased your debt, and now they're calling and harassing you?
Yeah, it would definitely. I mean, it definitely warns them, and they're scared of these. I mean, they're the real deal.
Okay.
You don't want to mess with them.
You don't want to mess with them. So, now, you said you've been in business 10 years.
10 years.
Over the 10 years that you've been in business, what do you see as being some of the more difficult cases with credit repair?
Well, the hardest. I mean, if you're continually late on anything, we can't help you.
Okay.
I mean, you got to get current.
Okay.
Whether it be get current on your credit card, get current on a student loan. You got to stop the bleeding, so to speak.
Right.
Because if once you stop that, then we can help.
Okay.
And one of the hardest problems is that if you want to do credit repair, you decide to start, but then you go late during the process, it affects it.
Of course.
If you get a collection during the process, it affects. It's very hard to help when things are still coming popping up on your credit report.
Right. Now, does that change the price of admission? Does that change your price? Because let's say you're helping me with, repairing my credit, and I don't pay my car note on time, and now I got a 30-day late on my car note, and then a collection that they've been calling me. Now the collection pops up on my credit. Is there an additional charge for that, or is that incorporated in?
We incorporate. We don't charge you something else. If something else pops up, we help you to the point that we can help you.
Okay.
And when everyone feels, if we can get you to this, I mean, the problem is, if we're getting you to a 700 and all of a sudden a late pops up and drops you down to 640, we'll do our best to get you back up there.
Right.
We can't promise we're going to get you back up there, but we'll do whatever we can to get you there.
Wow. And then your success rate?
I mean, our success rate is about 75 to 80%.
That's great.
Yeah, we know, and the thing is, we've been doing this long enough where we know the tricks and trade of what we do, and I don't take a client just to take a client. I know if I know I can help them, I'll help them, and I'm not going to waste their time either. So if we see a credit report and we know we can help them, by all means we'll let them know that.
Oh, okay. So you don't just, you're not going to take their money if you don't think you can help them.
Not at all. Because for us, we're going to do a bunch of work for 3 months and then have to give their money back. It doesn't make sense for us.
No, it doesn't. No. It doesn't. Now, you said you're thinking about, I know you talked about the 2 offices that you have, and clients can also reach you on the internet.
The best way to reach us is via email.
Is email.
Email, because we get back to you right away. We can show you how to pull your credit report. There's ways to do it for $1 to get all 3 credit scores.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can call, and call is great. We're happy to take your call. Email, I can get right back to you.
Email is best.
Email is the best.
Okay, so let's get that contact information going again.
Sure. The email is KAP, as in Paul, ERIK @gmail.com.
Great. And I'm going to have Erik's information posted on my website also. So get your pens out and take the information down. But if you don't, you'll be able to go to my website and get his information also. So another question we had, this question comes up a lot. And it's I think it's common. One of the more common things that people ask about credit, they want to know, how do they start credit? Like if they don't have any bad credit, but they don't have any good credit, how do they start to acquire credit?
Great. So one of the best ways is to get a small credit card. Again, go to one of the, Capital One, whoever it is, and you can get a credit card, a very small one for $300, $500 limit, and that's a great way to start.
Right.
However, there's a lot of students or someone who hasn't had credit for a long time. It's very hard for them to get that credit card.
Right.
So what I suggest is that you have a family member add you as an authorized user to a credit card. Because once that authorized user or that credit card reports to your credit bureau, it's going to give you a credit score. It's going to give you a very good credit score because you have no credit.
That's right.
Yeah, and the minute you get that good credit score, you can go out. You can't go out and get $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 credit card because you got to start small so they can see that you can handle the credit.
Right.
But then you can start getting your credit, and you can go to these companies and get a credit card.
Right.
So I would say the best way to start is try one of these credit card companies, and if you can't get it, then just go to a family member and have them add you as an authorized user.
Okay. Now, do you have any ongoing education for consumers, or the 10 questions that most people ask, or do you have a newsletter or anything like that?
We definitely have a newsletter.
Okay.
If you email me or we get their email address, we can add them to the newsletter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and once a month we send out just different tips on how to maintain good credit. What are tips to get your scores up, for example, with the authorized user.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we definitely have a newsletter that we send out each month.
Oh, that's perfect, with all types of little tidbits of information on how to raise your FICO score, maintain good credit, or some of the things that might happen that you may be able to avoid if you know about.
Yeah, and one of the other things we have on LinkedIn, we have what's called Best Credit Ever. And so it's just basically like a group that we started about 8 years ago. And if you go on there, you can either ask a question and we respond to it, or we do an update like twice a month on that as well.
Oh, wow. So, and all of this is free?
All is free.
So the only fee would be what they pay for getting their credit repaired, and then they get these newsletters that has ongoing information about maintaining their good credit once they have it.
Correct.
And how much of your business would you say is word of mouth and referral?
I would say about 98% of our business is referral based.
And you do between 80 and 100 credit repairs a month?
Correct.
Wow.
In addition, we do about $4 to $5 million in debt settlement.
In debt settlement.
Yes.
Wow. And then you answer my questions. Now, older, we have, my audience is mixed, young people, older people. So for young people, let me just reiterate this. If you don't have credit established, you don't have bad credit or the good credit, the best thing you can do is be an authorized borrower on one of your parents' credit cards.
But make sure
that it's good credit that's being brought over.
Correct.
Number one.
Correct.
And then the other thing you can do is you can get a line of credit through one of the credit card companies.
Correct.
Who they are known for giving credit opportunities, which is Capital One, Credit One Bank, and First Premier. Right. Those three will definitely help you if you're trying to establish credit, getting started. If you are more seasoned in your credit score, and you do have a FICO score, and you don't have good credit for whatever reason, and you have all bad credit on there, whether it's hospital, because that's what I see a lot when I do my classes on budgeting, is they'll tell me their credit score has been impacted just with hospital bills and things like that. So you need to get good credit going. You need to get that good credit going. And to get the good credit going, you need to do what? Print your credit report, figure out what's on it. And once you know what's on your credit report, start dealing with it, whether you call, someone who is a professional, or if you do it yourself, you need to look at that credit report. And now the credit reports, I know when I first started looking at credit reports, it's not the easiest thing to read and understand. So, I can't tell people what to do, but I'd say get a professional to help you, because the credit report is not the easiest thing to understand.
And we'll also, we won't charge a fee to review your credit report for you.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah, so if you want to send the credit report over to us, we are happy to take a look at it for you and let you know here's what needs to be done. Either have us do it for you, or you can do it yourself. But we're happy to give you a synopsis of what your issues are and how to fix those issues.
Right. So for 2015, let's make a pact for moving forward with good credit. You can call Erik. He'll be able to quote you once he sees your credit report how much it will cost for you to get your credit repaired, and just move forward with it and get your credit repaired, so that in 2015 your credit is not something that's stopping you. It's something that you're fixing, so that it will no longer be a place where you can't get the things that you want in life, and not pay exorbitant amounts for it. I just feel like it's just so, I can't say unfair, but I'd say it's better to have good credit and get a lower interest rate and pay lower payments than to have bad credit. And, yes, can you still get a car? Absolutely. Can you still get a credit card? Probably. But your interest rate is going to be a lot higher than if you have good credit.
Also, getting a job now.
Yes.
A lot of times getting a job, they look at your credit.
They look at your credit.
Whether it be, are you in the military, when you try to get a security clearance to go to a next level.
That's absolutely right.
So these are other factors that what you need help with in regards to credit.
And there are some professions that don't, they don't look, well on your not having good credit. So, What you have to do is call Erik and his team. Let them help you. He said email him. That's the best communication is email. You'll get free newsletters. He'll take a look at your credit report and see how they can help you. They're not going to take your money if they don't think they can help you. They don't want to waste your time or theirs. And if they say they're going to help you and they don't help you, you get a refund. If they can't not turn out to be, it can't be helped. So this is a win-win situation. You get your credit repaired, you go with a reputable company. He has offices here in Southern California and New York. You're probably expanding, I would imagine.
We're working on it.
You're working on it? Okay. Because credit repair is a big deal. It's something that a lot of people need.
It is.
A lot of people.
Yes.
So I thank you for taking the time to come in.
Thanks for having
and
us.
talk to us about credit repair, because it's definitely something that's needed for anyone who's trying to build wealth or and starting a business. Even starting a business, you can't open lines of credit. You can't do anything unless your credit is...
Even bank accounts.
Bank accounts.
A lot of people are in check systems. Check systems is another issue that
Could
people
you
have.
Speak to that a little bit,
Sure.
the check systems?
A check systems is where if you had a bank account and you bounced a check or you
Right.
had some overdraft and you never took care of it, you'll have trouble opening a bank account. And, check systems, there's ways to get you out of check systems. You may have to pay some money to pay back whatever you owed, but you can
Right.
settle that. But if you can't open a bank account, you're kind of trapped.
Right. And there are places that you can go to do business that are not, banks, but you're paying exorbitant fees. You're paying like more than you should.
Yeah.
When you can have a bank account, open a bank account, and use the bank to transact your business.
And it's very easy. Not very easy, but it's easy to get you out of check systems if you figure out what the situation is, and we can help you with that as well.
Right. So if you're in check systems and you can't open a bank account, you need to call Mr. Kaplan and his team and talk to them about whatever your challenges are. So if you have any credit challenges with opening bank accounts, challenges with your credit card debt, challenges with maybe mortgage payments or bad debt from college or from hospital bills, any kind of bad debt you have, this gentleman has a company. They've been in business for almost 10 years now, and they have I did a little research on them, and I was telling them that before I brought him on my program. And, they're a credible company. I'm happy to be able to bring them on and speak to this credit issue because it's a big deal.
Yes, it is.
And, you want to build wealth. You can't have it without good credit, or you won't be able to maintain it without good credit. So if you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, you want to start your own business, you want to get a good job, all of those things, you want to open a bank account, all of those things are linked to good credit. And if you want a company to help you out of the predicament you're in, I'd say give Mr. Kaplan and his team a call.
310-804-9353.
That's perfect. Now, I do want to recap here a little bit and talk just a little bit more about getting out of check systems, because I notice when I teach my financial literacy class that is a big deal too. Hospital bills, a lot of times people don't have a lot of bad debt. They just have bad situations.
Correct.
Hospital debt, and I'm not saying hospital debt isn't bad debt, but it didn't start out, you went to the doctor and, someone reported you didn't make a payment. So with check systems though, you can help with check systems. You can help get them out of check systems so they can have a legitimate bank account, okay? So you're listening to Lunch with the Finance Bunch. This is Miss Charlene. You're listening to Accelerated Radio, and we have Mr. Kaplan in my studio today, and I'm so happy he's here to talk about credit and all the ways he can get you out of this bad situation that a lot of us have found ourselves in at one point in our life or another. Doesn't make you a bad person. It's just a situation that you need to get out of. And by educating yourself, you can, and by talking to Erik Kaplan, you can definitely get out of it. He can tell you how much money you need to use to get out of it. He can tell you what's on your credit report so you'll know what needs to be fixed. So let me get your information again. We only have a few minutes left. So Erik, tell us your contact information one more time.
You got it. 310-804-9353.
Exactly. And what is that email address?
Sure. KAP as in Paul, ERIK@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Erik, thank you
very much.
so much for being on. I
Thank you for
appreciate
having
you
me.
coming. Lunch with the Finance Bunch. This is Miss Charlene, and I will see you next week. Thank you.